Tom was a romantic at heart. His notebooks and writings make clear that for Tom, backpacking and climbing was a spiritual pursuit. Tom's notebooks are full of references to the purpose and value of what he called passion for the hills. Communion with natural beauty, sharing that beauty with others, these were core values, but he also loved the feeling of being alive that came with the challenge, the danger of mountaineering. In one of his handwritten notebooks, Tom copied out this quotation from naturalist Bob Marshall. When Marshall writes, "For many people, there is a significance as vital and as satisfying as that which any communicant ever derives from feeling his spirit one with God, in feeling themselves to be one with nature, in cutting all bonds of habit, and drifting into the timeless continuity of the primeval." This idea of loss of self, oneness with God, repeats throughout Tom's notebooks. Tom had a deep distrust for organized religion, but he was raised in the Catholic Church, and the mystery of communion was part of his early years. Going through his papers, I came across a file of schoolwork his mother must have preserved from Catholic school, where young Tom has drawn scenes from Holy Communion. It's hard for me not to see this as a through line in his life. He was not a Catholic, but he was a seeker after spiritual communion. In an essay he wrote in graduate school in the mid-'80s, Tom wrote about key spiritual experiences he had had in the wild. And he kept telling a lot of these same stories right up to the end of his life. The essay is titled "Spiritual Values of Wilderness, A Personal Perspective." He analyzes the work of one of his climbing heroes, Himalayan mountaineer Willie Unsoeld. In the late 70s, Unsoeld gave a series of lectures in which he outlined 3 spiritual values of wilderness, which Tom summarized as getting perspective on life and putting daily problems into perspective, experiencing mystery and wonder in the face of beauty of nature, and last and most important, the loss of sense of self. Unsoeld wrote that at the very apex of this line of experience is the vision of unity, being virtually identical with. This idea recurs over and over in Tom's writings and notebooks, the quotes he pulled out of other writings, right up to the end of his life. Tom identified 3 expeditions in that essay, expeditions where he'd experienced these spiritual values that Unsoeld described. The first expedition was his 1978 trip to the Brooks Range in Alaska, his baptism into wilderness. He wrote, quote, "The stark beauty of the mountains we traveled through filled me with a sense of religious wonder, and the sheer overwhelmingness of the landscape was an uplift to my spirit. Physically, the hiking was difficult, with miles of tundra tussock swamp, dangerous river crossings, steep mountain passes to overcome, but I began to feel a sense of individual accomplishment that I hadn't felt in a long time. My self-concept was improving with each difficult tussock swamp. I returned home much better prepared to face the day-to-day stresses of job and relationships, and I gained some valuable insights on how to rejuvenate my spirit in the future." His second experience came during his 1983 ascent of Denali, Mount McKinley, during which he experienced what he described as, quote, "strange emotional experience that I would categorize as wonder and mystery." He goes on to quote from his expedition notebook, "White winds at sunset, 11 p.m., sun sinking. Descending across the high plain in bowl of 19,800 feet. Ground blizzard surrounds us, it's 20 below, but I feel a glow. Strange forms of roped climbers far below, fading in and out of the white winds, snow plume we walked into, purple haze as the sun sets below, clouds forming into strange animated shapes. Down, the winds increase, the snow flies, the cold bites the face, weird, there's music playing, the sound of snake charmer's flute, it's the winds, the white winds blowing from through my pack frame. The tempo of the flute increases, the white winds gust about me. Am I alone? No, the rope moves ahead. The hills about us, so weird, black rock, white slopes, Huge white dome of the north summit, purple sky, white winds, flute music, higher notes played by the power of the wind. I am transcended for a moment, floating from the earth. The forms, the sounds, the colors. I am unattached observer drifting above the surface, held only by a purple strand of rope, otherwise I think I may have floated away. Then I begin to shiver, the winds are penetrating. The situation's getting serious. We're on some steep, loose stuff, the wind blowing me off balance. Back to earth, connected, very tense. Concentrate on the downward steps. The third and most important experience came in a 1984 trip to the Teton Range in Wyoming. During that trip, Tom did a solo climb of the southwest couloir of a mountain called Disappointment Peak, and during that climb he experienced what Unsold had described as, quote, the very apex of this line of experience, the experience of total loss of sense of self, complete oneness with the cosmos. Tom described this experience to Anna just a year ago. This audio is a little broken up. There's some wind in the background. I've done a little to clean it up, to bring out his voice. But these are Tom's words describing his spiritual experience on Disappointment Peak.
It was doable on my level and everything. It's called Disappointment Peak. I was backpacking up there for a base camp, and I was going to get up early the next day. And everybody was coming down. It's like, and they're talking about the clouds dropping, and I go, oh, damn. Oh well, I'm just going to go up there and camp and see what happens. So I did, and it was like drizzly that evening and kind of wet setting up the camp and all socked in. Thought, yeah, whatever, I'll just go down tomorrow and see what happens. In the morning, it was clear where I was. So I got up super early, I started up this little narrow ice couloir, and you really had to focus being solo. I couldn't screw up at all. Exactly, that's right. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing it even, but I was comfortable, technically. And I had a rope for rappelling. If I got in trouble, I could wrap down or anything. But once I got up out of this little cull where I was camping, there's like low peaks around. Once I got up above there, about halfway up the climb, oh my God, like the sun broke out of the clouds. And it was the weirdest thing. It was just awesome because there was a cloud level that covered everything else. And I was alone on a peak above the clouds with the sun breaking through. And I don't know if it was adrenaline or what it was, but I had one of the experiences that just kept me going back to the mountains. It was like this feeling that started in my feet and moved up through my whole body. It was like a religious experience of joy, pure joy. I can't describe it even. Anyway, it was awesome. Yeah, it was a spiritual experience.
In his essay, Tom goes further. He says, "For just an instant, I was no more, but only the feeling of oneness with it all prevailed. Soon I snapped out of the trance, and my immediate reaction was that I had found the reason I came to the mountains. I was compelled to climb in order that I may worship in the presence of the sacred." Tom never stopped pursuing that feeling. He never stopped looking for the sacred in wilderness. It's there. It really is. In the very last thing he wrote, his last entry, Saturday night, the night before he died. Day 6, rest and recovery day. Morning was beautiful. So great to be at 12,400, amongst the Sierra granite and big mountain views all around. Good to stop and take care of little things, try out boots, etc. Stay hydrated and eat well. Lovin' it. I most needed a break from Durango. Backcountry experience. Daily busy. Plus, I came down with a cold 2 days before day 1 driving. It passed fast, though, and my energy returned. but lingering snot and lung crude continues. It feels like the days in the 80s, climbing into the Tetons. I'm back at it, with the suffering and triumph and mountain beauty and wonderment of the alpine landscape and environment. Rocks, wildflower, mountain architecture, big weather, quiet, solitude.